My name is Melvin Fujikawa. I live in El Cerrito, California, presently. I grew up here. I grew up in Los Angeles, Torrance, Gardena. That's where I've lived. And how I identify myself today. I am a Asian American, gay man, now single, now a widower after Mark died. Yeah, that's who I am. I grew up in a very Japanese American community, Gardena, California, which was at the time when I was growing up in the 60s and 70s, probably maybe the 80s too, was very, very Japanese American. Not so much anymore. I was, my mother, they were basically both Nisei. My mother though was more Americanized, much more, yeah, she wasn't your typical Japanese American woman. In a Nisei's sense, she was more progressive. And so I think she offered me a certain freedom that a lot of my colleagues, or kid colleagues, didn't have at the time. And I kind of grew up in that sense of freer spirit, perhaps, than I would have otherwise. And I was music artist from out of the womb. It was always singing, music in the house. That was just who I am, who I was. And my mom, she was smart enough to know this kid's not, that's his thing. And so she encouraged my passion. And she would take me to lessons and orchestras and performances. And so I was very, very fortunate to have a mom who understood the value of who I was and what my gifting was all about. So I grew up in an Japanese American community, but I didn't fit in. I really, really didn't fit in on so many levels.
How did you not? What differentiated you from?
I think number one was just being artsy. I think that was probably, everybody else was doing more academia and this kind of a thing, and I was a performer. That was my thing. And in the performing, especially at that time in the 60s, the 70s, there weren't a lot of other Asian Americans involved in performing arts. And I was like the only one, my school that I'm on the stage, but everybody else is non-Asian, So, and it's weird because there were so many Asians, but they just weren't at that point encouraged to be in that profession. And even if they might have had the talents, I think the parents just didn't want their kids to be starving artists. They wanted them to be starving dentists or doctors or whatever, but they didn't, So that was definitely happening.
How did you see yourself as a Japanese American in those circumstances then?
I felt out of place. I felt very out of place as a Japanese American, and so my mother, again, good old mom, she saved me. She took me out of the community to be in other communities of performers, which were all like in Fairfax District and Plumber Park, and it was like I'm now. She took me. She knew that if I was going to survive or thrive, that she had to remove me from the immediate context of where we were, residing at the time. So thank God that helped me to understand that, there's a whole world of things that more connected to who I was. So that was really important.
Did you see yourself very much as a Japanese American person growing up?
No.
You did not, okay.
Not at all. Because I didn't fit in. I totally didn't fit in to at least what was going on at the time in Gardena. It was like, And I had some Japanese American friends, but a lot of my friends were not Japanese American. Even in the context of a very Japanese American community, I found friends, but they were non-Asians because that's who I liked. So that's how we connect. People I connected with, both from the performing arts standpoint and I think just natural affinity. It just didn't work. I didn't fit in well with a lot of the Japanese kids. So.
And was there a certain point at which your awareness of being different in terms of your sexual orientation or gender identity became clearer to you? Was that emerging when you were younger, or did that take some time?
I knew really, really early on that I was gay. Yeah, I mean, or at least maybe not the word gay at that point, but I knew I wasn't straight, and my attraction for men, for boys, and so on, my colleagues was always male. It was never in question. I had struggles with being gay throughout my life, but I always knew. So it was not a struggle of knowing that I wasn't gay. I always knew.
How did you feel about that knowledge when you were very young?
It was hard. Yeah, it was very difficult to be gay, and I would try desperately to hide it. Constantly edit. Just awareness of my whole. I guess, yeah, just my physical and what I was doing. All my life, even now, I still catch myself editing. It's weird, yeah. It's such a habit. And it's better now. At least I catch myself doing it, and I feel it. But I also catch myself doing the other thing, which is good too. So it's a transition. But it's because I think just the journey out, and I stayed in the closet for so long. Closet habit is just part of who I am,
There was a point in time for you as a young adult where you made a shift towards Christian ministry.
Mm-hmm.
How did that square with your perception of yourself as gay or JA?
So I was invited to. I did not grow up in the church. My parents were not religious, so I was brought into the church community to Gardena Valley Baptist through friendships at school, and so that was how I began my life of faith, my journey with ministry. Interesting. So the Gardena Valley Baptist again, at that time was very, very JA, very Japanese American, and so these are my friends, right? These are my Japanese American friends who are so not expressive and just not the artsy types that are out there, so to speak. And I walk into one of their Sunday school classes or whatever it was that they first invited me to, and I see all my friends and they're singing, and I'm thinking to myself, these people sing? I mean, I never heard them, singing was just the whole, and I'd never been in the context of worship. I didn't understand, but what I sensed at that point was the word was freedom that I had not sensed anywhere else outside of the context of this little, class of worship time, and I was so intrigued because I thought, oh my gosh, this is great. So the first thing that brought me into church was freedom, actually, in a kind of strange way that I felt more. And then they found out, then my friends found out that I could sing, and then they made me. They empowered me by, why don't you lead? Why don't you become the leader of our, time of worship? And I suddenly, and so I was valued for something that was really, really important to me, which was music, of course, and in this context where it was such a kind of an amazing kind of freedom again that I had not been in and I had no experience with up until that time. So that's what drew me into the church. It was still a struggle, of course, to with my sexuality, and the church said nothing at that time. And I think it's partly the Japanese American thing too, is they said nothing about homosexuality, and they never addressed it. I mean, whatever the clobber passages, they didn't care. Because it wasn't an issue at the time, and nobody. But things were said, but it wasn't directed at, homosexuality per se. So I didn't feel condemnation, but still, just the stigma of what was going on and how I didn't fit in and not dating and everything else. So it was hard. But again, the trade-off was I really, really, really liked ministry. I liked being able to lead people. I liked all that. I liked being a part of that whole community, because it gave me opportunity to love people. And yeah, I think there was at some level kind of it definitely was some kind of a trade-off where it gave me at least some kind of sense of intimacy that I didn't have at that point, allow myself to have as a gay man. And so yeah, it was definitely a choice to choose a way for intimacy in a lot of ways that I didn't have.
But that shifted at some point in time.
Yes.
Can you talk about that shift and
yes.
the journey after that?
So, so I continued in ministry and I was a worship pastor, a worship leader, choir director. I did campus ministry with AACF for a number of years. And then I got to the ripe old age of 40. At that point, I went through my quote unquote my midlife crisis, for lack of better words. And my midlife crisis was really just like, so who am I? I mean, what, and the person I had it out with was God. And I just sat there for a good year and a half where I was so angry and frustrated. I would yell. I would get in my car and I would scream at God and just say, you did this to me. Why did you do this to me? And you better have a really good answer. And this little conversation with God went on and on for, like I said, almost about a year and a half. And finally, I get the answer, which is simply, yes, I do have a reason. That was it. God says, I have a reason for why I created you the way I did. And I go, okay. I mean, and the answer didn't come. I mean, the sense of the actual reasons didn't come, but he just said there was a reason. And so that was good enough to start the process of then discovering, so what is the reason? What are the reasons why you did this to me and a whole lot of other people? You better have a good reason. So, but at least that was the turning point of really the acceptance of understanding the purposefulness of my identity, so yeah.
Can you articulate what that turning process looked like until you eventually could come out on the way?
I did. So I began research. I did start more reading about just the whole gay sexuality. I went to All Saints in Pasadena so I could actually just see models of what, like, gay couples, sitting around me, minimally that. And so I wanted to just know that there are and were people like myself. I think those were, in terms of exploring the whole gay identity and my sexuality, that's kind of my limit. I didn't actually have any sex with men. I didn't cruise. I pretty much, because I was in the ministry still, and so I had to protect in the sense of, not being so public, obviously. And so I didn't allow myself to really explore beyond the kinds of more observations and study and this kind of a thing.
At one point, though, you laid ministry aside. Was that ostensibly to take the exploration further?
So the way it happens is then I leave Los Angeles at the ripe old age of 50. I think I was 51. In 2006, I was called. Well, I was actually called to a church. I was called to Christian Layman Church in Oakland in 2006. I became an executive pastor, one of the pastors at the church. So that was step one. Around few years in, actually, it was I believe my feeling was it was God that finally said it's time to come out, and I was ready. Yeah, I was ready. I felt it was time too. I mean, it was crazy. I mean, I was 55 years old, but it was like I'm ready. Yeah.
And what did that step look like?
The readiness step was nothing. I mean, in the sense of nothing really happened other than I just made a decision that I would. But what it did mean, what it propelled me to do was to think about how. So at that point, I knew I would be leaving the church. So I resigned in end of April, May of 2010. With the intention of not knowing exactly when, but I thought I want to separate myself from the church before, as to not cause issues and problems for Christian laymen. I am now stepping out of the picture so that when I do come out, there's no harm, no foul when it comes to the church itself, because I'm not a pastor. I won't be, So I come out. So I leave the church in that spring of 10. I start my outing process in October of that same year, and that's.
What did that look like?
I started with. I was very, very strategic. I picked and chose exactly who I was going to tell when I told them, and the order in which I told them, and I was able to. So I started with my one of my closest friends, my roommate at the time. We weren't roommates. That's right, Peter and I. Never mind. He was we were roommates for a long time, and so Peter Wong and I had a conversation that October afternoon over a glass of wine, and that was my first step of sharing.
And how did that feel to you?
It was amazing. It was great. It was freedom. Yeah, it was true freedom. Peter and I knew I was very strategic. I started with the easy people first, the ones I knew would celebrate who I was, and then I worked down the list. So. But I said, I'm going to start with the ones who are going to really this is going to be a party. And so Peter, and he was so thrilled and very, very affirming, and just honored that I would share with him that I was gay. And it felt wonderful to finally be able to say it to somebody. I was scared, but I was just, it was like weights, a rock had been lifted off of who I was, my shoulders. And I remember driving home or driving where I was like, I just feel like I felt freedom and lightness and just it was like cleansing almost. Yeah. So yeah, but that was step one, and then like I said, I went very strategically down the list, including you, and each person was it was wonderful. It was scary each time, and less scary as it went along. But outing, and we know now is such a long. It is a long process, and since I had been in the closet for as long as I'd been, although it was interesting because I had come to a place before I come out, with all the work that I had done prior while in the closet. I actually felt okay. I actually felt good about being gay before I stepped out of the closet. So I had put myself ahead of the game in that sense. But still not knowing what people would do, my friends, my family, what they would, I had no idea, what they would do when I finally told them. So from 2010, this is 2018, I come out, I meet the love of my life. I take care of him in sickness and in health, mostly in sickness, till he dies. And now I'm a widower. All that happens in a period of 8 years. I'm still it still blows my mind in terms of just the shortness and intensity of all that's happened in just 8 very short years. But I think that I'm so much more Melvin now than I ever was before all those circumstances and the journey of being loved by a man that I loved and being married to him till death do us part. That there's no way to describe how that affirms just who we are. Who I am, what I am now. Like I shared earlier today at the forum, that celebrating who I am was so critical. Celebrating as a married man, celebrating as the man left behind. All these things have now just opened up even more of how I feel about the calling. And now that I know, now I know the reason. God made me this way. It's to, because everyone needs, gay, straight, doesn't matter. We all need to know that we're loved and to be powerfully given that we need affirmation to know who we are. There's no other way. I think that's just how love is the way we understand who we are. I've taught to him so many times. And the thing I always tell him is, you don't know, the gift that you are. You don't understand. You don't understand the gift of who you are to the world. You will someday, but I know you don't understand now. It's okay. It's okay. I learned too that the closet actually is a sacred place. That growing and becoming, and even in that pain, that was important to me. Was to, and I don't know how to resolve that in the sense of it's not about everybody's different, but for me the closet represented a place of growth, solitude, and when I finally did come out, it was wonderful. And so, as the 26-year-old me, I would say thank you too. There's a part of honoring the timing for everyone. And so me at 26, I was amazing in the sense of my patience, my ability to stay. Where most guys would have been, I'm out of here. I'm just gonna do what I want to. But I was honoring. As a 26-year-old, I was honoring a lot of other people already that I don't think a lot of 26-year-old people can do. So I would thank my 26-year-old person for saying, you know what, you're all right. that kind of tenacity, that kind of strength to stay is going to help you when your husband dies. Because I had to stay with pain. If I didn't stay, I mean, that was thriving, that was life together. And I've learned now that, pain is, that thriving in the pain is what we so desperately need in this world. We're terrible at not staying, at not listening, at not hearing, because we're so afraid. We want to get out. We want to get out of pain as fast as we can. We want to solve the problem. And that's not going to help. We need to listen. Yeah, we need to listen to each other and hear what does that pain mean? What are you really saying? It's because it's way beyond words. It's way beyond words. Yeah.
You are such a gift to all of us.
Thanks.
Thank you so much.
Thanks, Gary.